And good Friday afternoon, a very rainy Friday afternoon here in Lexington. Lee K. Howard along with Alex Walker. It is a Facebook Friday. Thanks for joining us. We will be on Facebook for about the next 10 to 15 minutes talking about the big win for the Wildcat football team at the Citrus Bowl. Also previewing the upcoming SEC opener for the men's basketball team. First, though, I want to get Alex's thoughts. You are freshly back from Orlando from the Citrus Bowl. Just what was that atmosphere like there in Orlando and the big win?
Still haven't unpacked my suitcase yet, so I'm still getting through the process of coming back. But it was pretty wild. It was a very 50-50 split. A lot of times when Penn State travels for bowl games, they take over cities. That was not the case. Kentucky was so excited to be down there, and they filled that stadium up. It was almost to capacity. I think it was the second most attended New Year's Six bowl game.
I saw that, yeah.
Or pardon me, non-football playoff game.
Right.
Which just shows how big of a game this really was for Kentucky. The atmosphere was electric. And towards the end of that game, I tell you what, on where we were in the press box, Kentucky was on the other side of the field.
Okay.
Penn State was right beneath the press box. When Penn State started to come back, it got pretty loud in that stadium when the momentum started to shift. But Kentucky held them off, and it was so much of a better story that Kentucky won and got that 10th win.
Well, there at the end of the third quarter, Benny Snell breaks the all-time rushing record, becomes, like the all-time rusher, and Kentucky goes up by a couple of touchdowns. And a lot of people, including, I think, some of the players and coaches on Kentucky's staff, might have thought that, hey, we've got this game in the books, but, Trace McSorley, and they came back in that fourth quarter and really made it interesting.
They did, and kudos to Kentucky for keeping their cool and finishing that game at the stretch. And I tell you, one of the neater moments of the whole week was the fact that when Benny was about to break the record, Brian Milam had a calculator. He was just subtracting each run. It was like 65.
Wait, did he actually
45.
have a calculator, or did he have his phone?
It was his phone. It wasn't one of those old
I thought he brought a
class.
calculator to the field.
Yeah, what are those called? The old brick ones?
Yeah, the Texas Instruments T1.
It was just his phone.
Brian carried one of those in his pocket.
If he did, that'd be pretty great. But he was just counting down. All of a sudden it's 20. All of a sudden it's 15. All of a sudden it's 5. I almost think Kentucky fans knew too. It's like they were counting down too, because they just started chanting Benny, and you could hear it loud.
Oh, absolutely.
On the broadcast in the stadium, and as soon as he did that, it set up so beautifully. Everything about Benny's career is set up like a storybook, including that moment, and it was so neat to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, over the last 6 years that Mark Stoops has been at Kentucky, he has worked to change the culture of a program and put together a roster built on physicality, really. Stoops putting together one of the nation's top defenses, led by the National Defensive Player of the Year and Josh Allen, and he established a real ground and pound style of offense that a lot of people thought Kentucky could never be, with the school's all-time leading rusher now, Benny Snell, two players who made a major impact in changing the Kentucky football culture.
There's no question that these guys changed the culture. As I mentioned many times, it's really easy to change the climate of a program. Culture is deep rooted for a long period of time, and it takes a lot to overcome and change that, and these guys did that. And yes, by finishing games with a physicality and finding a way to win rather than finding a way to lose is changing a culture, and it comes with being physical.
And Mark Stoops, a Big Ten guy, and when he first arrived at Kentucky, he had Neil Brown, who we're going to talk about here in just a little bit, as his offensive coordinator, an air raid disciple of the Hal Mumme, Mike Leach type offense. And it looked like at that point that Kentucky might be more of an air raid team, but now you see Mark Stoops has slowly but surely got back to his Big Ten roots, and Kentucky is beating teams, or did beat teams this year, with physicality. They didn't have to gimmick them around or throw the ball around. They basically lined up right against them and smacked them in the mouth.
It was a very Big Ten style. Start with defense, let your run game punish them, and just punish them throughout the game, wear them down, and then beat them towards the end of that game. That's exactly what they did. Remember Mark Stoops, when you mentioned when he got here and when he started to see what he was trying to do with this program, he mentioned a couple times, we got to get dudes that can compete with the nation's best. We can't just try to out-scheme them. We need to physically get the players in this building to compete with some of the best programs in the country. And when you're playing Penn State on New Year's Day on a big network with the Goodyear blimp in the sky, all eyes are on you, and you're just punishing a Penn State line that was punishing teams like Ohio State, Michigan State earlier in the year. That just shows that this whole thing has come full circle, that Kentucky has arrived, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And they bring back a lot of talent too. So this is a program that's going to continually get better and bring in recruits that can compete with the Penn States of the country.
Last year they brought back 17 starters headed into this year. Not quite that many this year, but they do bring back 10 starters from this year's squad next year. So the cupboard isn't bare. Now, one guy they are going to lose, and he's a big one.
Oh, yeah.
Josh Allen. Of course, he could be the number one pick in the draft. And he let everyone know after that press conference there at the Citrus Bowl that he is the top player in the NFL draft. A statement that he has backed up many times this season on the field. And just the other day, CBS Sports moved him up to number 2 in their mock draft. That would be the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Josh was a projected top 5 pick even before deciding to play in the Citrus Bowl, but he capped off a tremendous career with another big performance in that bowl game. 4 tackles, 3 quarterback sacks, a quarterback hurry, and, oh yeah, how about a blocked field goal? He played special teams in a game that most other players in his position wouldn't play.
Incredible.
Yeah, he could be the greatest defensive player ever at Kentucky. And get this, he says this time this team is the best team to ever play at Kentucky.
I feel like we're going to go down as the best team to come out of Kentucky. That's how I feel.
Easily.
I feel like we got a lot of great players on this team. We haven't won 10 games in a very long time. We haven't beat Florida in a very long time. We haven't broke these many records in a very long time. Just a lot of accomplishments all around this team, and we're better. We're a better team to break it. To be the best team ever this year. So.
He certainly makes a good case for that. I mean, when you think back in Kentucky football history, there's a couple of years that pop up in your mind: 1950, 1977, 2007, and now 2018. And so however you want to rank those teams, these guys certainly have a case for being number 1. I mean, it's phenomenal what they've been able to accomplish.
And what's cool is that a lot of those guys from those prior teams are in love with this team. It's not like they've given them so many shout outs on social media, Facebook, Twitter, just saying, I love the way you guys compete. I love the way that you brought this trophy back to Lexington. There's a lot of mutual admiration between these top programs in Kentucky history. And this one certainly is up there. And you got to love Josh. So many bold statements. I mean, he's a guy that was a 2-star recruit, was going to go play for Monmouth. Now he's an All-American, won a big bowl game, could be a top 3 draft pick, maybe number 1. And he ends his press conference at the Citrus Bowl by saying, if I'm not number 1, I don't know who's going to be. It's incredible how far he's come to make a statement like that.
Yeah, one heck of a statement, and a guy that's usually pretty reserved.
I know, right?
And I watched the broadcast of the game, and pretty often in that broadcast they would say, here's Josh Allen, here's a guy who could be the number 1 overall pick. I think it kind of depends on what the need is of the particular team picking, but once they get to pick 4, he's off the board somewhere. 1, 2, or 3, I definitely think so.
The other part is everyone, when Josh tweeted that, when that statement went viral that he was going to be number 1 in his mind, everyone's like, Nick Bosa. Like, Nick Bosa's good. He's got that lineage too that kind of backs it up. But
he's got the name.
He's got injury history.
Right.
And B, when he was playing this year, he was dominant, but he was not Josh Allen dominant. And it's not like they were playing 2 different calibers of opponents. Big Ten, SEC, they were playing very similar type teams. And Josh Allen performed from day 1 to the end of the season, including the bowl game. And he impressed a lot.
Well,
the scouts got to be salivating to have him on the roster.
I got to say, I mean, whether he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, whoever picks him up, they're going to get the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
Incredible.
Now, one other football note before we get to basketball. We will talk about the Wildcats opener at Alabama tomorrow afternoon. But first, a guy with Kentucky ties, not only for the Wildcats, but a Boyle County native, Neil Brown, now rumored to be, not official, but rumored to be the next head football coach at West Virginia.
It's that next step towards official status. Any minute now, we'll get a release from West Virginia saying it's official. But this is a huge opportunity. And Neil Brown, year after year, the last couple of years, has been kind of that hot candidate for big-time Power 5 jobs. And West Virginia is a great landing spot, in my opinion, for Neil Brown. It's rumored to be a 6-year deal. And one tweet I saw was Dana Holgorsen, it's very rare you lose a coach to a group of 5 school in Houston and potentially replace him with a guy that could make West Virginia even better. And if you can win at a place like Troy, I mean, you're winning at LSU, 3 straight 10-win programs, 3 straight bowl wins. He had it rolling at Troy, And now he gets to go to West Virginia, a place where he can recruit even better talent there.
And I think the talent, though, at West Virginia is already there for him. In the way, I think when Neal first was hired on at Kentucky, the issue that he had was he didn't have any receivers at Kentucky who had caught touchdown passes, period. And the cupboard was bare for the kind of offense that he wanted to run, the air raid type of offense. The thing about West Virginia is Dana Holgorsen has been running that exact same offense for several years now, for the entire time he's been there. So Neal Brown steps in, and he already has that type of personnel, that type of roster that now he gets to develop. He's very familiar with this part of the country and recruiting in this part of the country, and he gets to go in and play in the conference, the Big 12, that fits that type of offense the very best. So, like I said, I think it'll be official anytime now. Great for Neal Brown and a Boyle County native right there.
That's very cool. It's great to see.
All right, we're going to talk some basketball now because it is basketball season, and everybody likes to call this the second season when you begin conference play. Camp Cal is now complete, and now Kentucky set to begin SEC play on Saturday afternoon at Alabama. One player, though, who has really benefited from that extra practice is Tyler Hero, the reigning SEC Freshman of the Week after his 24-point performance at Louisville. But while others have been focusing on his shooting, the UK coaching staff says they've been very impressed with his improvements in all the other areas of his game. Associate head coach Kenny Payne said yesterday he is a complete basketball player.
When we watch film, you know what he does really well? He gets to the basket and finishes with both hands really well. You ready? He gets in passing lanes, gets steals, and get layups. He can beat somebody off the dribble and pull up and make a shot. We want basketball players. If you want to be a shooter and just be a shooter, should have probably went to another school. This is a basketball player school.
Absolutely is. How about that?
That's good stuff. And yeah, Tyler Hero, there are many things that has made this team evolve and grow and get better. And Tyler Hero is such a pivotal part of that. Everyone keeps saying, oh, Bahamas Tyler's back in the building. Because he balled out there. Now he's finally finding his groove. He's not thinking so much. So much for these freshmen, it's a mental game. Like, should I be doing this, that? Just shoot, man. Because he's got that stroke. And when you see him with confidence, he's walking all over the court, chest bumping people, having that swagger. And they need him in SEC play to continually play like that.
And I think you hit right on it. It's a confidence thing, and he has that now. You know, they did want to change his shot, and they did change his shot to be a little bit quicker when he first arrived here. But he was so focusing on, don't miss the shot. Excuse me. Take a good shot. And now he's got that confidence.
Oh, yeah. One thing I was going to say earlier is that I want to go personally through Camp Cal because
sometimes you got to cough.
I want to burn off all those Christmas and New Year's calories, right?
That's right.
All that conditioning. I need that too a little bit.
All right. Well, no school though over the last couple of weeks means that there's been more time for Camp Cal in practice, and that practice has also really paid off for another guy, Ashton Hagans, and it's been showing in his play on the court as well, both offense and defensively. Associate head coach Kenny Payne credits Ashton's conditioning.
Before this period, he got tired really quick. And when he got tired, he had defensive lapses. By being in better condition, by working on the things that he's worked on 2 and 3 times a day, we've seen a big jump. And also, he's helped our team become better.
All right, Marlinda Hall asks, what time do they play tomorrow? Well, good question. 1 o'clock is what time the Wildcats play in Tuscaloosa. You can see that game on ESPN tomorrow afternoon. Alabama, Alex, 9-3 overall. Yep. Not great. I mean, they've taken a step back from where they were last year.
Correct.
But anytime you go on the road in the league, it's going to be a good game and a good test for the Wildcats.
And one thing that helps a ton is, let's say they lose that Louisville game. They don't really have that confidence on the road yet.
Right.
That's not the case.
No, they
go into Louisville,
their
first true road test, as you mentioned in your report. They passed that test with flying colors. So now these players have that road confidence already, and you got to think that Louisville atmosphere is going to be a little crazier than Alabama. They're not known for having one of the more hostile environments in the SEC, but it'll be a chance for them to go in that building and try to start SEC play on the right note. In recent history, they've dominated Alabama, which is good because Alabama has had some good teams, but UK is going to try to get that win.
And here's the other thing. If you think about this is the perfect time to play Alabama because their entire fan base
is
in California right
point.
now.
I didn't even think about
that.
that.
You know, the entire fan base is in California getting ready for Monday night's game for the college football championship. So only the diehard Alabama basketball fans will be left over in Tuscaloosa tomorrow afternoon. So if you could pick out the perfect weekend to play at Alabama, I think you would win either way, but it would be this weekend.
Oh, that's true. And that last soundbite from Kenny Payne about Ashton, before the season started, you did a story about Ashton and how he was brought here as a defensive stopper. In the first couple weeks of the season, we saw that, but we didn't really see that breakout yet. We're like, okay, we've heard all this hype. Where is it?
Right.
Boy, the last couple of weeks, we have seen why he was brought to Lexington. He has been not only a defensive stopper, setting UK records, or at least tying them with 8 steals in a game, but offensively, when he gets in the lane, his chemistry with PJ and Reed is incredible. He's finding those guys, lobbing it up, letting them finish it off.
And I think the whole key was what Kenny said, what Kenny Payne said right there. It was just his conditioning.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he had that talent in him. He was just getting tired. And so there would be a defensive lapse. So now that his conditioning is to where it is, we should expect to see him play that way offensively and defensively much more consistently than he did maybe earlier in the season when maybe the transition from high school to college hadn't quite caught up to him yet.
And one thing with this Kentucky team, too, going into SEC play, games like this you cannot afford to lose.
Right.
There are so many talented – we've talked before the season started, the SEC – is as good as it's been in a long time. You cannot lose the gimmies. Nothing's a gimme, but you got to win.
Sure.
You got to be Alabama. You got to be
certain ones you
Vanderbilt.
have to win.
Because when you're playing Auburn, you're playing Tennessee, teams that might be favored in those games. Those are the kind of toss-up games. You cannot afford this year, especially, to lose to teams like Alabama.
All right, so we think Kentucky, both of us think Kentucky goes into Alabama and wins pretty.
I think they win by double digits.
I think so, too. Okay, and of course, Alex will have those highlights for you tomorrow night right here on WKYT at the 6 o'clock news.
And real quick, if you miss this specific show and you watch this later, you can also see this on our podcast as well.
That's
WKYT is starting some sports podcasts, some news podcasts. So subscribe to WKYT podcast and you can listen to this report and future reports outside of this hour.
That'll be the best podcast you've listened to all day.
It'll make your road trip go right by.
All right, he is Alex Walker. I'm Lee K. Howard. Thanks again for joining us on this Facebook Friday. We'll see you right back here next week.